Well, every couple of weeks we catch up with our Professor of Education from the University of Newcastle, and he's here right again, John Fischetti. Mate, thank you so much for your time today. School's very much now in that transitional phase of getting back to some semblance of what they were. That's kind of where you want to sort of wedge in this morning.
Yeah, good morning, Mark. I hear a lot of families telling me, and maybe you've heard it around the shop here, that everybody wants to get back to normal, that we're nearly there. And we know we're not, but we're sort of closer than we were, right? And I'm just sort of resisting that back to normal. Do we really want to go back to what I'll call the rat race, where we're running our kids around to soccer and piano and to this and to that, and where families are always stressed and they pass out just before school holidays and get it back together again? Or could we, and I'm framing this term just to be kind of weird, why don't we go forward to normal? Why don't we learn from the last couple of years a couple things that were actually okay for many people, not everybody. We had a lot of suffering.
Well, there are kids and by extension families that have heavier schedules than CEOs of multi-million-dollar corporations.
Yeah, and I've noticed some of them are back to that. I'm hearing the chauffeuring and the carpooling, and we got now just accepted to this new soccer club, and it's 20 kilometers over here, and how we're going to get the daughter to dance and the son to soccer and then to swimming on the Thursday. It's too much. We already knew it was too much. So what did we learn in the last couple of years for some families with privilege, not those who absolutely have had to fall on hard times? Well, one is that we actually could cook together. Remember that a couple of years ago? We learned how to stay home and cook, and everything was off the shelves in the supermarkets. For some reason, big bags of rice were gone and flour you couldn't find. But wasn't it wonderful that we were learning and cooking together and enjoying that? What if one night a week was family night to cook? We didn't lose that chance. We might not get the swimming lesson in, but we get the cooking opportunity in. We certainly learned how to staycation. And with everybody now trying to get back their travel, some people actually have cooked up just enough savings that is going into some fund for a big trip, but maybe just one of those. We don't need 2 or 3 a year, maybe staying home and taking advantage of this glorious place we call the Hunter, which for 60,000 years has been kept pretty well by the elders in the past. What if we learned also that we could use some of the technology in the right ways, which allowed us to actually learn differently? So in our school sector, I'm hoping the schools won't go back to worksheets, won't go back to boring assessment, would allow students to have the opportunities to co-create. Some of the assignments from home were a little bit vague, Mark, but allowed a student to invent it. We used flour and sugar and water at home, and we called it chemistry. Could we go back and do some things that were original and fun and trusted students to direct their own journey? We call that self-regulation in the field. And I think we can go back and not have to go back to the sit in rows and listen to teachers talk approaches.
So what I'm kind of guessing, John, is you're trying to meld the best of both worlds there and sort of weed out the stuff that probably wasn't as productive as it could have been and move in some of the things that we previously hadn't considered and turned out to be quite useful. We've talked about a lot of things in the past where this school's doing that and that school's doing and something different, and they're getting some good results here or there. But there's always that push to have any sort of change, really.
Right.
So how do you make that from a philosophy and with a feel good? This would be fantastic to getting it across the line.
Well, one of the most lucrative businesses during the lockdown periods of the last couple of years was actually running a bike shop. Families got bikes and they rode them. I bet they're sitting getting rusty on the side of the garage or wherever they're hoisted up to now, locked up. I think we've got to find a way on a Saturday afternoon. We're going for a bike ride. We don't have to, but we want to. If daylight savings goes off and we have more darkness in the day, we just have to build in the time once or twice a week to do those things which we remember we actually enjoyed. And I think that's one example, making sure we're moving in our day, not allowing ourselves to then come home, the television's on, the radio should always be on, by the way, as you know, to 2NUR. But the opportunity we have to continue to do the things that we actually found the time to do when time was made for us. Employers are going to be a little more flexible. There may be the opportunity for a day or two for those jobs that are appropriate to be home and do working from home. With that comes less stress of the commute, maybe less traffic to report on air, but a chance then to maybe have a little time in the early evening when you're not getting transport to be with those kids, read a book, take a bike ride, take a walk, cook dinner together. And for teachers to think about, we have a little window of opportunity where teachers have been celebrated and loved, and where their love for who they are as people, not for the rigor of the curriculum, their love for the opportunity to be in school. Schools are more than babysitters. They're cherished places where kids go to be inspired. Let's be inspiring.
All right, well, we'll see how this period of adjustment, which, however we end up, that's kind of where we're at. We'll see what that looks like over the medium term, I'd say. It's always a pleasure. Our Professor of Education from the University of Newcastle, John Fischetti. Have a great week.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, we'll catch up with John next time at 2NURFM 103.7.
A broadcast service of the University of Newcastle.